The book is called Here Comes Trouble. It's 24 short stories from my life before I made my first film. And I'm going to read. I think I'll read one to you if you'd like to do that. But if I could say a few words about what's going on in the country. You can feel it, can't you? We're in a moment, aren't we? You know, I was talking to the congressman there on the Upper West Side, Jerome Nadler, yesterday, and he was saying it's amazing that it was really just a little over a month ago that the entire political discussion in Washington and across the country was about debt ceiling. Does anybody remember the debt ceiling? Like that was the big crisis, you know, the deficit, all this. The whole conversation got changed. The whole conversation got changed because a group of people showed up, right? What's the old saying about, 99% of it is showing up? And there's a line from a Woody Allen movie that's spinning in my head now, I can't remember it, but basically, people showed up. They showed up down there on the corner of Liberty and Broadway. And it was laughed at first, it was ridiculed, it's just going to go away, because it's always the crazies that show up first, right? The crazies, right? And the hippies with the bongo drums, right? And that's the media tried to remember in the first week, tried to put it down. It's just those crazy kids, nothing else to do, et cetera, et cetera. But when you stop and think about it, any political movement, all the great political movements begin with the crazies, right? Someone has to burn the first bra. No, I mean not me, but when the women's movement began, that's how they were portrayed, right? As extremists and crazies. And that's just in the modern day women's movement. Can you imagine what it was like to be a New Yorker back in the 1840s when you had the crazy idea that women should have the right to vote? If you've read anything about what the women of Seneca Falls and all what they had to go through to put forth what seemed to be a very simple and just idea. They were ridiculed, they were harassed, they were hated, they were jailed, they were persecuted. And yet, eventually, and this is always the good news, isn't it? Eventually, tyranny falls. Eventually, oppression is defeated. Whether it's yesterday in Libya, or whether it's in 1920 in this country. And think about how women had to get, in order to get that constitutional amendment passed. Because people say to me all the time, Mike, we can't get any of this done because corporate America controls these congressmen. We'll never have the kind of money they have. How, money rules. And well, yeah, that is true right now, the way things are. I guess they are able to buy their members of Congress. But back then, to get that constitutional amendment passed, giving women the right to vote, how many women got to vote for that constitutional amendment, giving themselves the right to vote? None! None! They had to convince all men. Only men could vote to give women the right to vote. That must have seemed like the mountain that could never be climbed, right? And yet they did it. And that's the story, isn't it? Each way, along the way, things actually do get better. Sometimes it takes a long time. Sometimes there's a big struggle. But eventually it gets better. And it's so heartening right now to see what's going on with the Occupy Wall Street movement that has spread across the country. There are now over 120 cities that have their own Occupy movements. And that's the ones, those are the, and here's Occupy Huntington. Those are the ones that we know about. There's probably another 100 we don't know about. There's a little town in Michigan called Niles in southwestern Michigan. 11,000 people. They had 100 people out there 2 weekends ago. 100 people in an 11,000 people town. So just let me do the math for you. That's about roughly 1% of the town showed up. 1%. If 1% of America showed up on the National Mall, that would be over 3 million people. We've never seen a demonstration of 3 million people in this country in one location. 1% of Niles showed up. 400 in Fayetteville, Arkansas showed up to occupy Fayetteville. I mean, Salt Lake City's got 1,000 occupy Salt Lake in Utah. That's what's happened. And you know, I've been down there, and the press, you know, oh, Mike, explain this to us. How? You know, and I said, well, you know, listen, first of all, I'm not the spokesperson. There are no spokespeople. Or, in fact, actually, we're all spokespeople. Because everybody has a story to tell. I'm sure just about everybody in this room has a story to tell from the last decade of how you were asked to give up sick days, to give back pay, where your job went someplace else, where your health benefits were cut, where you had no health insurance at all. 50 million Americans with no health insurance? I mean, what will historians say about us? You know, throughout history, groups of people, countries, nations, have always punked on other nations, other groups of people. It is generally not human nature to punk on yourself, just for your own self-preservation, right? Just for your own self-interest. It's good to have the tribe healthy, right? Why would you have 50 million people go without being able to afford to see a doctor? I mean, it really makes no sense, does it? Why would you take a piss on your own and on your own children? Who would do that? What kind of people would do that? Does anybody think that it's strange that we're the only Western democracy that does that to its own people? Not other people, our own people. You know, I don't agree with it, but I get why we are into invading other countries and why we ship pollution elsewhere and we do these dastardly things. I don't like it one single bit, but I kind of understand it. You know, we're not the first ones to have done that. But when we really, why would we do this to ourselves? Why would we create a nation of idiots, of people who are literally ignorant? Why would we get rid of civics class if we love our democracy? Why? That's right. Why would we make schools and education? Why would we put that on the lowest rung of the ladder? You know, an educated people is what advances the people. Why would you do that? We have 40 million adults in this country right now that cannot read and write above a 4th grade level. 40 million. We're called functional illiterates. In other words, they can operate the cash register at McDonald's and they can greet you at Walmart. They've made sure that the basics are covered so that the basics for industry can happen with the worker peons that they need to produce the things that they need to produce. Beyond that, if you make people too smart, they start to figure things out. Right? It's why the Republicans want these voter suppression laws. You know, they're passing all these laws now to make it really hard for people to vote next year. Now, why would they do that? Well, here's my answer. In some ways, they're smarter than we are. They know something that we don't know. They know that the United States is a liberal country. This is a nation that is a majority of liberals. It's the truth. It's the truth. Now, most Americans are not going to call themselves liberals, but they are liberals. When you go down any of the issues in the polls of what they believe in, people take the liberal position 9 out of 10 times. Very few issues that they don't, like the death penalty. Majority of Americans still support that. But all the other issues, over 60% of the public wants these wars to end now. They want that $2 billion a week being spent here, not over there. That's the majority of your fellow Americans. The majority of Americans believe women should be paid the same as men. That's like 85% believe that. The majority of Americans want stronger environmental laws, not weaker ones. That's the liberal position. And last month, for the first time, the majority of Americans said they believe, 54%, that gay marriage should be the law of the land. That's your fellow Americans. That's the people you share the country with.